All right, welcome you back to the Patrick Netherton Show, 1130 The Tiger. That guy's Roger Sampton. I'm Patrick Netherton. And we're pleased to welcome in the man who I believe made the same pact as Bob Costas did a long time ago, that he will never age. As long as he lives, he will look the same age. He is one of the best voices in the business, also a hell of a writer while you weren't looking, has a book out as well, and is just an all-around good guy and a man who once had the honor of sitting next to me in the mock selection committee back in 2009. He is the lead anchor for the Big Ten Network, Dave Revsine. Rever, what's up, man?
Not much, Patrick, but yeah, that 2009 selection committee, you shot me a copy of our photo of the two of us together, and pensive was how I described it for you. We were really pondering everything the committee had to say. But thanks for your kind words. Good to be on with you.
Well, the problem is, Dave, you look exactly the same 11 years ago. I look like I'm 56 years older. Like, what did you seriously, did you call Costas up and sign the same pact where you're going to look boyish your entire life, and while the rest of us age and look like decrepit, the guy from the Crypt Keeper? Did we lose him? Hello? There you are.
You still got me?
Yeah, you just broke up there for a second.
Oh, all right. Early in my career, this was a huge issue for me. When I was doing local news and I would send out tapes, and people would reply to me and say, well, I think you're really talented, but you look like you're 14. And so, my response was, well, why don't you get on the ground floor, hire me now, and then 10 years from now, I'll look the part. So, we all have we all go through this aging process differently, but it's funny that people comment on it now in that way, because it was something that used to drive me a little bit crazy.
Sure. It's one of those deals where, when your kids say, I can't wait to be a grown-up, you're like, just hold on, kid. I promise, you'll get there, and you're not going to necessarily like it. You get to be youthful your entire life, so it's good for you. Also, Dave, not for nothing, you're in the Rick Astley All-Stars, I think, of guys whose voice is, I don't necessarily think your voice matches what you look like. You have a great resonant voice, but, much like Rick Astley, I don't think you look like you should have that voice. I'm trying not to insult you with this, but you do have a fabulous voice that doesn't necessarily match your youth and boyish good looks.
Well, thanks, Patrick. I've had an unusual voice my entire life, and again, I would say sometimes as much of a hindrance as a help, but it is interesting. It follows you wherever you go. That's for sure.
Well, now you're at the ultimate spot. You're the lead anchor for the Big Ten Network. You're the guy out there when the Zoom calls are going on. The Big Ten is announcing that it's coming back. Kind of walk me through that day of okay, we know that the presser's coming. Now we know that it's going to be basically breaking news. You're going to be, for lack of a better term, you're going to be a newsman at that point, sitting up there kind of dealing with, all right, your producers are out getting various coaches and guests lined up. Tell me about going through that process and how kind of chaotic that was.
Man, it's been a weird year, Patrick. I really feel like I've been on the set more for breaking news than I have been for actual sporting events, unfortunately, right? We haven't had anything since March the 11th, but man, we've had a lot that's happened in the interim. And I kind of think back to the first day where the Big Ten tournament was canceled, and that was a day where you turned into a newsman, as you put it, not expecting it. I wouldn't say you didn't expect it at all. I mean, certainly it didn't go smoothly the night before, so there was some sense that maybe this would be the end of it. But yeah, I mean, to have that day where we were just kind of reacting, it began with us doing a pregame show for Rutgers against Michigan, and it ended with the entire NCAA tournament being canceled, right? I mean, that's a crazy day.
Yeah.
And then you go to August, and you have a day where the Big Ten announces that they are not playing football. They're going to postpone it kind of indefinitely. And so that was a strange day. After 6 days earlier, we had done the schedule release to much fanfare with the Big Ten. And then, as you alluded to last week, the day where the Big Ten announced that the postponement was over and that they had found a way to get back to football, particularly using rapid testing. So, yeah, I mean, just kind of crazy days. And I'm really proud of what we've done. I mean, we are not. Look, I worked for 11 years at ESPN, as you know, and when I was there, I mean, one of the things that people who aren't there don't know, or if you've never been there, like the newsroom is just kind of this constant hive of activity. I mean, there are probably a dozen people who work on the assignment desk. It's a 24-hour-a-day news operation. By our very nature, we're not, and I would say no conference network could possibly be that. And, the regional sports networks aren't that. I mean, there's really very few places that are 24-hour-a-day news operations. Mm-hmm. So we've kind of had to figure out through the years, how do we mobilize for big events like this? And I'm really proud of where we've gotten. I mean, I just feel like, that day I felt like we really shined last week, and I think we shined on some of these other days as well, and it's particularly because of the people you alluded to. I mean, all the behind-the-scenes people, all the producers, and then to do it in the midst of a pandemic when we're limited as to how many people we can bring into the office. I mean, I'm here today. It's like a handful of people to put a show on the air. I mean, it's just totally different from how we used to do it. So it's been, I think, frustrating in some ways because obviously you want to have sports on your network, and we're looking forward to getting back to that next month. But it's also been really gratifying to kind of see everyone come together as a team and put together really good television. I'm proud of what we've done.
The voice and the face of the Big Ten Network, Dave Revsine, joins us. All right, let's go back to when the decision was made. Ultimately, the Big Ten says, "Hey, we're not doing this. We're not." Our medical experts say this isn't the right thing to do, so we're not going to play football. And then, of course, there was the backlash, and there was the protest, and everyone kind of pushing back against it. And then you were hearing, okay, well, there maybe is some cracks forming, and maybe this comes back. As this process is going on, at what point did you actually stop and think, okay, they may reverse course here, and we might actually get Big Ten football?
I started to hear that probably a week before they reversed course, that it was a distinct possibility. I think, when the Pac-12 contracted for those rapid tests, which they have now at their disposal, I think their issue is more some of the state regulations that they're dealing with. But that rapid testing is the total game changer, Patrick. And I think we kind of knew all along that would be the game changer. I don't know that the Big Ten articulated it as well as it could have back in August as to kind of why it was postponing the season. But it always came down to this idea of we're not going to play until, or practice for that matter, until we can have players, when they go on the field, know definitively they don't have the virus and that we know they don't have the virus. Because contact tracing is just kind of borderline impossible in a football practice or game. And I think we're seeing that play out now with all these games that have been canceled. They're really canceled because of contact tracing.
Yeah.
Because you have guys that turn up positive, and now you say, oh, look at all the people that they've been in contact with. Well, if they weren't on the field in the first place when they had the virus, then you wouldn't have to go through the contact tracing, and you'd have the ability to play because you wouldn't have as many people in quarantine. So that, I think, was always what the Big Ten had its eye on. I think that just happened so much more rapidly, frankly, than they thought that it could. And so when they postponed the season in August, I don't think there was the belief that come the end of September they'd be ready to make that happen. But it's going to be the case. I mean, all 14 Big Ten schools are going to have the rapid testing in place as of September the 30th.
You mentioned the message being sort of lost back in August, and I think that's a very interesting point because I believe in the end I really honestly feel bad for Kevin Warren, the commissioner, because he steps in. He's obviously replacing a legend to start with. He steps in, and he has to deal with this. This gets basically put in his lap. And as the kind of, as you are for the Big Ten Network, he is for the Big Ten, the face and voice. It's his responsibility to sort of, outlay what exactly the presidents and chancellors came up with, but it's not his decision, and he has nothing to do with it. So did you feel a little bit sorry for him that he stepped into this hornet's nest right, and basically the first thing he did as he came in, because he's not really the decision maker, but he's got to find a way to justify it?
Well, you make a really good point, first of all, that he isn't the decision maker, right? That is the presidents and chancellors, as you said. It is their decision. And then Kevin Warren now he is involved in the decision making and certainly is aware of the conversations that are going on. But ultimately, he doesn't have a vote in it. It's the presidents and chancellors who vote. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, I think he could not have stepped into a more difficult situation. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's crazy to think everything that's gone on here in his first year. I have a really good relationship with Commissioner Warren. Obviously, I haven't known him nearly as long as I knew Jim Delaney, who was just a wonderful part of my life and became a real partner for us at BTN, really was from the beginning. I mean, this was his vision, but someone that I got to know better and certainly got into a groove working with. Kevin Warren is an exceptional human being. I mean, he is a wonderful guy. I think he has an incredible vision for this league, and I think in any other ordinary circumstance where you're kind of playing a normal 2020 season, where you haven't canceled the basketball tournament, where the NCAA tournament wasn't canceled, I think this, like his first year, would have been a rousing success because people would have gotten to know him and understood what he's about. It just didn't work out that way, and so it's just kind of been unfortunate timing for him. But I really have no doubt that he is ultimately going to be someone who Big Ten fans are happy with, who they think highly of, because I've gotten to know him, I mean, a fair amount for only having known him, for only having him be in my world for a year. Mm-hmm. And I just think he's an exceptional guy. So, yeah, I feel for him, but I think the Big Ten's on the right course. I think they did a really good job with their message last week. I think it was very clear why they were doing what they're doing last week. And so if you learn from things that don't go as smoothly, and that certainly was the case, and I think it's absolutely fair to say it didn't go smoothly in August, but you turn around in September and convey the message really well, I think that's a huge step in the right direction.
Dave Revsine, lead anchor for the Big Ten Network. All right, so as much this is an unfair question. I'll go ahead and tell you from the beginning, this is going to be an unfair question. Do you have any sense, or can you even remotely predict if you will see an entire full schedule for the Big Ten, because they scheduled it very tight, no bye weeks, all of that? Are we going to see cancellations? Are we going to see, some teams playing 8, some teams playing 5, 6, that kind of thing? Or can you even fathom a prediction on that?
I think it's so hard to predict. I do think they're well positioned to play more games or to have a higher percentage of their games get played than some of the leagues they're playing right now, just because of what we talked about. I think the testing plan is a really good plan. And I think, again, if you do have people test positive, they're going to be able to get them out of those meeting rooms and off the practice field really quickly. And so I don't think that you're going to have, I hope you're not going to have the same issues with contact tracing that other leagues are having. I will say this, Patrick, I don't know if you feel the same way, but there's a part of me that kind of feels like this year, man, anything we get is gravy. I mean, I know you love college football. Mm-hmm. I love college football. To go without it is painful. And I think there's much more patience for kind of imperfections in the schedule, right? I think, we up here, we scream and yell about, well, the Big Ten plays 9 conference games, the SEC only plays 8 conference games, and it's not fair, and how can you compare, playing another conference game to playing, some non-conference opponent who's not all that challenging. That you're comparing apples and oranges, and we get all bent out of shape when the college football playoff selection comes around. And I think that's okay. I mean, that's healthy. That's what being a fan is about. And I think those are all legitimate arguments, except for this year, when I think, man, anything we get will be great. I'm just excited to see college football in our part of the country again. I understand how much it's woven into the fabric of these schools and these states. I know how important it is to people, and I just can't wait to see it. And if it's 8 games or 9 games with that additional game they're playing on championship weekend, or if it's 7 games, I guess to me that isn't quite as big a deal as, hey, it's something. The fact that it's something just matters to me.
Is there any trepidation? And I'll tell you, I'll be upfront and honest with you, Dave. I've been very much on the cautionary train on this one. I have not been comfortable with the fact that college kids were the ones that were going to be thrown out there first before the NFL ever played. That bothers me on some level. Is there some trepidation for you at, hey, these are, look, they get scholarships and they have great facilities and all that. That's cool. But these are unpaid guys. This is not paid labor. And is there a bit of trepidation on your part on, why are we pushing those kids out there and potentially putting their, livelihoods or health at risk for a game, basically? Is there any thought about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a totally fair point. And I mean, if you listen to kind of what I said after the I guess it was August 11th when the Big Ten postponed, again, I thought it was utterly defensible. We are in a pandemic, and this is a game where it is impossible to play the game and not breathe on somebody else. And again, you're piling up and you're going for a loose football and all of those things. And so, yeah, I mean, I would say even right now, I mean, even with all of the testing, if you believe it isn't safe, I think you can make a strong argument for that. What I love is that they've said that people who don't want to play can opt out. The issue to me is that you have to keep the kids who are playing, kind of separate from everyone in the community. Keep them separate from, some of these schools. You might have an assistant coach who's in his late 60s or early 70s. It's really important that those people don't get infected. It's important that professors not get infected. But again, that would be the case whether you're playing or whether you're just walking around town, right? I mean, I think it's serious. I think it's real, and I absolutely think there's an argument to be made of exactly what you said. Hey, it's a game, and why are we doing this with everything else that's going on? I do think the counter argument is that the overwhelming majority of kids clearly want to play.
Yeah.
The coaches want to coach. And so, can you figure out a way to do that safely?
Yeah.
And I think the Big Ten is the best plan that I've heard to do that safely. But to say I absolutely respect anyone who decides they don't want to be a part of it, and I love the fact that you don't lose that year of eligibility and you can opt out. I mean, understatement of the year. You do what you feel comfortable with. If you're a coach who doesn't feel comfortable being a part of it, I don't think there should be any financial penalty or anything like that. Like, hey, this is serious. It's real. We have 200,000 people who have died from this in this country. Absolutely. If you don't feel comfortable, don't do it.
No doubt about it. All right, last thing before we let you go, Rever, always appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. So we know, obviously, Ohio State. We know Penn State. We hear all about the teams that we know are going to be part of the national landscape. Is there a squad or two out there that you look at and go, man, these are the guys that maybe could sneak up there, challenge for the title, maybe get into, if we have bowl games, get into a big bowl game? Are there some sort of under-the-radar teams that you're looking at this year?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about like challenging for the title and whatnot, I don't know that there's anyone truly under the radar. I mean, I think Wisconsin's going to be really good. They're going to have to figure out the running back situation, but it seems like they always do. So it doesn't feel like that'll be a big issue, and they'll be really good on the line. They bring back an experienced quarterback, and they bring back virtually their entire defense. I think Minnesota will be good again. I mean, to me, what's going to be really interesting is Kirk Shirake is gone. He was the offensive coordinator. He actually went to Penn State, and he was kind of the mastermind of their RPO offense. So Mike Sanford comes in to run it along with Matt Simon, who was their wide receiver coach. Interesting to see kind of whether they still have that same offensive mojo. They do bring back Tanner Morgan. Again, there's some uncertainty as to whether or not Rashad Bateman will play. He had originally opted out. There's talk now he might opt back in. But they'll be really good up front along the line. They bring everyone back on the offensive line. I'm interested in how their defense comes along because they lose some of the stars there, including Antoine Winfield, who was a high draft pick. But Minnesota seems to me as kind of the other one from the West that could really make some noise. And their crossover games are really favorable. I mean, they don't have to play, Ohio State. They don't have to play Penn State. So, the two top teams in the East aren't playing the two top teams in the West. And so I think that helps them on both ends kind of put together better resumes to be in consideration for the college football playoff because maybe you don't have to worry about stumbling in one of those cross-divisional games.
I actually did have another question since you brought it up. Nebraska, and I'm wearing my Nebraska basketball shirt from when I went and visited Tim Miles up there, one of my favorite humans in the world.
The best.
Oh, he's the best. Tim's
Such
great.
a good guy.
Oh, and so, Nebraska kind of came out and whined a little bit about their schedule and we added these teams or whatever. Do you think, you mentioned the top two teams on either side don't really play each other. Do you think there was some, maybe a little bit of coordination in that? Like, hey, let's preserve who we think will be the top teams this year?
No, so I mean I can tell you definitively there wasn't, just
Okay.
because there is a pattern to who plays who. Each team in the Big Ten goes, I think it's 5 or 6 years, with one team as a protected crossover.
Mm-hmm.
So in Nebraska's case, that is Ohio State. Like it just is right now.
Yeah.
So they were guaranteed of playing Ohio State. Everyone is playing their protected crossover. And then the other game that they chose to keep for every team on the schedule was the home game, the home crossover for the West Division team.
Okay.
So the home crossover for Nebraska this year was Penn State. That has been the team on their schedule from the get-go. So that was the formula. It is the same for every single team in the league. Now, the order of the games is challenging, right? I mean, they begin at Ohio State. They have Wisconsin at home. They go to Evanston to take on Northwestern. They were a little down last year after being very good 2 years ago. And then they come home for Penn State. So those first 4 games, I mean, 3 of them are arguably the 3 hardest games on their schedule. I don't think anyone's out to get them. But, I mean, if you're going to argue anything, you say, man, that schedule order is really tough.
Yeah.
But the teams that are on the schedule, Patrick, and I do think there was nationally some misconception over this.
Sure, and that's why
the teams that are on the schedule are, I mean, there's rhyme and reason to why they chose them. They are the same for everyone.
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked, because, when down here you look at it and go, oh, well, Nebraska's complaining. Clearly the Big Ten's out to get them. They scheduled and there was a lot of that down here, right? LSU got a couple of easy crossover games. Arkansas got absolutely hammered with crossover games. So, we kind of already conditioned to believe that, and so when you hear that coming from Nebraska, you go, oh, well, that makes sense. They would prop their guys up. Rever, man, you're the best. I thank you so much for your time. I actually kept you longer than I should have, but I do appreciate you, man. Keep being you. Tell DiNardo we said hello. We had him on last week. Love him to death. Y'all be good up there, man. Stay safe.
He is the best. Thanks, Patrick. Good to hear Roger's voice as well. Take care, guys.
All right. Dave Revsine, Big Ten Network.